Hey guys, you know the drill. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the shop, guys. It is great to have you here. Before we get into the main part of the video, I wanted to do a follow-up on the bandsaw. So many of you guys came through with flying colors. Those of you who commented and shared, it was so helpful. A couple of you even sent me some links that have been very useful in putting everything back together. A couple of you had mentioned that there was a adjustment knob on the back, which there is nothing on the back, so it must be different saws that have that. Several of you mentioned that there was an adjustment screw in the middle of the wheel, and I thought that screw held it on, just like, I guess I thought that was logical. But you guys are dead on. That screw right there will adjust the cant in this wheel. And now we have this thing running right dead smack in the center. Let me show you. So here you can see we've got the bandsaw running right in the middle. Several of you guys had mentioned the tires, and this tire, thankfully, wasn't very worn. It is really quite smooth, and it has a nice hump to it, which is what I have been told by several of you and on a couple of videos that I received. And now when you turn that, you can see how that runs perfectly right in the middle. So let me bring you down here on the table and look at the adjustments. So I've begun to adjust this, and you can see this bearing right here runs freely. And when I was adjusting it earlier, it looked to me, see, it touches and it stops, so it's just barely rubbing on that bearing, which is exactly what we want. And right here does the exact same thing. It'll stop and then it will hit every so often. So we want both of those bearings to have equal pressure, so that this one, if one of them is further back than the other, then this will bend and want to track off in a different direction and want to run through the grain rather than cutting straight. So we've got those bearings set just right. I'm sure there's a lot of you that watch my videos that know all of this stuff, so just hang with me. I just wanted to cover this. I was so happy that we're getting this worked out. So I already told you about the setting of the bearings here that hold the bandsaw from moving backwards. We also have these little blocks in here that you don't want too much friction. So you set those in there till they touch, and then you just give a little tap to give a little bit of spacing, and then you tighten the screws here in the back. And so you can see how there's in fact, I don't know that you can tell that that's moving, but I can feel it knocking back and forth, but it should be very, very steady. So we got to get those blocks down here in the bottom. Those blocks also need to come right up to, I think they call it the gullet in the teeth, which is just at the bottom of the tooth. You don't want that encroaching in on that tooth, so that's just behind that tooth. So let's get this bottom one set, get this together, and then we'll get to the main project. Well guys, I am just thrilled that bandsaw is working well. Thank you guys so much for commenting and sharing with me. This is a great community to be able to learn from and to share with. And so I've got the next video that the next thing I wanted to share with you here, and we'll finish up the video with that. And on the last video, we were talking about this Maul, and I made a comment that I had a splitting axe, but I was wanting a splitting Maul. And somebody in the comments said, what's the difference between a splitting axe and a splitting Maul? And so I thought, hey, that would be a good video. So let's come on down here on the bench and take a closer look. So there are several hand tools that we use for splitting wood, and I'm just going to give you the ones that I am familiar with here. The first one here is a splitting wedge. Now there are several types of splitting wedges. In fact, somebody in the comments also shared that they had a splitting spike, and I wasn't really familiar with a splitting spike. Had to look it up, and so you can see a picture of it right here, what a splitting spike is. There's also another kind of splitting wedge which is twisted, and you can see that one here in the picture. And so you have different types, different styles. Each company's trying to come up with their own brand, their own style, their own, basically trying to build a better mousetrap. So here's what we have as far as a splitting wedge. Now for the last video, we did a splitting, what I call a maul. Here in North America, the term that I've always learned was a maul, and a maul was a very large, heavy, wedged head that you used for splitting wood. You can see just how big and bulky that bit is. You can see how large the cheeks are and how thick this is. And I want to compare this splitting maul with the Craftsman splitting maul that I did some time back, and I'll put these videos that I'm referring to in the comments so you can refer back to them. This is a Craftsman splitting maul, but you'll notice there's two different kinds of handles. You've got term slipping my mind. I tell you, it's a terrible thing when the mind starts to go. It's a sledgehammer handle, and that's the round handle is a sledgehammer handle. But then they also make these mauls with an axe handle. You can see that it has the curved axe handle. A straight axe handle would not work in this because a straight axe handle has both sides are like this sharper, narrower side. And so this is an axe handle, but it's still a maul. It's still got that heavy bit. It's got those large cheeks. But then let me bring you down here and let's take a look at a splitting axe. Now here we have a splitting axe, and you'll notice that it is basically just a larger axe head, and that's exactly what it is. These, I'm pretty sure, I know this one's a 6 pound. I think this is close to 5.5 to 6 pounds. This is 4 3/4 pounds. So they're just heavy, and they're made to be able to penetrate the block of wood. And so here we have a splitting axe, a splitting maul, and another splitting maul. The thing is, I could see where somebody'd make the argument that this and this are both splitting axes because they take an axe handle. But it just to look at this from my perspective, we have the maul, the two mauls, one with a sledgehammer handle, one with an axe handle, and then you've got the splitting axe. For those of you who are interested, you can see how my wedges, I wanted to drive them a little deeper, so I just got some old junky sockets that were the size of those wedges, and I just drove those wedges down in there a little deeper with these sockets. These are sockets I don't intend to use for mechanics. I'll simply use them for driving these kinds of wedges. But you can see these different styles of splitting tools. Now, The biggest thing for me is when you're looking at an axe, you've got this curved handle, and it is most easily used when, of course, you're using it like this and you come down, it doesn't crank your wrist as much, and you're primarily using the bit to do the work. This one here has the axe handle in it, and so it would be most comfortable to always be using the bit. If you try to turn it over to drive the wedge in, then you're not going to be as comfortable here on the handle. You kind of have to choke up. It's just not as conducive to being able to drive a wedge. The other thing is that this pole on your mauls is made to be a striking tool. An axe, the pole of an axe, is never intended to be a striking tool. You can use it to drive stakes or drive wedges when you are dropping trees, felling trees, but for the most part, this here is not to be struck. Now you'll find in places where these are all mushroomed over, and it's just, to me, horrible to see that. You don't want this pole all mashed up. An axe is not made to be struck with another metal tool. I will put again a link to this video, and you'll see some of that, and we'll talk about some of that in that video if you're interested in checking it out. Now the rest of these are made for striking your wedge and driving that wedge down in there, and I prefer these straight handles. That way it doesn't matter if you're using it to the bit side to split, or if you're going to use it to drive your wedges and as a striking tool. Either way is equally comfortable, so it doesn't really matter. To me, the most efficient maul is one with a sledgehammer handle, not so much with an axe handle. Now if you're going to use it to be doing the actual splitting, and I do know that there are some people who will use a maul in conjunction with a sledgehammer. I get that. You drive that in there. If it doesn't go, you start striking that with your sledgehammer, and this becomes a wedge with a handle. So there's multiple ways of doing that. To me, a maul is the very big and bulky heads that are striking tools as well, and not just for using the bit. To me, the splitting axe is strictly to be used on its own and for splitting, and not to be struck on the head. So to me, that's the difference between a maul and a splitting axe. Well, that was a lot of fun. It's always fun to take a look at these tools. Hopefully that helped clarify some things, at least from my perspective. That's the difference that I see in these two different tools. Both splitting tools, one's an axe and the other is a maul. Or as they say, I can't remember if it's Australia or in Great Britain, they call them blockbusters. But these are my blockbusters, and I really like the axe when I don't need to strike with anything. If you've got nice straight grain and you're going to use it primarily just for the splitting part, and you intend for it to go through, that to me is great. If you're going to be using it not only to split but also to strike, I like the straight handle, and I like the maul so that it can be used in conjunction with a wedge. So guys, thanks so much for joining me on this video, for helping me out with the bandsaw. That I am just so thrilled that bandsaw is up and running again, and it's working great. Thanks to you guys for helping me out on that. Thanks for joining me on this video. If you find this entertaining, please hit the thumbs up. If you know of anybody else that you think might enjoy this content, please share this link with your friends. I hope to see you on the next video. Subscribe if you haven't, and have a great day.